Unaware his wife was a secret multi-billionaire CEO, husband beats his pregnant wife for showing up at his promotion party. What she did next. At the board meeting, destroyed him. He didn't just raise his voice. He wrapped his fingers around his pregnant wife's wrist in the middle of his promotion party, dragged her behind a marble pillar, and hissed that she was too plain to be seen with him in front of his coworkers. When she tried to show him the tiny ultrasound photo in her hand, he slapped it away and shoved her so hard she hit the polished floor, curling around the child he had already chosen to ignore. That night, Elise Hawkins, who everyone in that hall knew only as the quiet, ordinary wife, lay on the cold tiles with music and laughter echoing above her. Her dress was simple, her shoes were cheap. Her wrist burned where he'd grabbed her. Across the room, his mistress smoothed his tie, and his colleagues pretended not to see. He thought she had nowhere to go. He thought she had no power. He thought humiliating her in front of his entire world would stay just between them. What he never knew was this. On every confidential document he never bothered to read, her name was not only Elise Hawkins. Legally, she was still Elise Vivian Laurent, the hidden owner behind the very corporate group his precious company belonged to. For years, her signature had quietly approved budgets, promotions, and expansions, while he bragged about impressing some invisible CEO he'd never met. The same night Daniel raised a glass to his bright future, security footage of his violence was already being copied. Internal audits with his name on them were being opened, and an emergency legal file was being built around the bruise on Elise's wrist and the heartbeat she had protected on that floor. As she whispered, "I'll protect you," to the child in her womb, a different version of her name was being spoken in closed rooms he never knew existed. "Bring this to Ms. Laurent. She needs to see everything." From that moment, this was no longer a story about a quiet, helpless wife. It became a silent war, one fought with board meetings, legal documents, recorded video, and a level of power Daniel had mocked for years without knowing it was sleeping in his own bed. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Elise's voice disappear under that party music. When you click that button, you stand with every woman who was told to stay quiet, every child protected by a mother who finally chose herself, and every heart that refused to stay small. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. Elise Laurent, 29 years old, quiet, gentle, and always underestimated, sat at a wide marble desk piled with documents that could shake entire industries if she signed the wrong line. Her calm eyes moved over folders labeled holdings and executive approvals. Private. The cool light above her reflected off the gold seal of Laurent Enterprises, a multinational empire her family had built long before she was born. On paper, the CEO of this empire was E.V. Laurent. No age, no photo, just initials. Most employees in the group companies, including her husband, assumed those initials belonged to an older man who loved privacy. No one outside the inner circle knew the truth. Elise Vivian Laurent, the soft-spoken woman who spent her evenings cooking in a small kitchen, controlled companies that other CEOs bowed to. Most people who saw Elise assumed she was soft, maybe even fragile. They never imagined that behind her simple clothing and soft voice stood a woman who could quietly freeze a whole division's budget with one email. She had inherited the empire at 23 after her parents died in a quiet tragedy that only the board and investors knew about. Her father had raised her with one rule: power means nothing if you can't protect the ones you love. That single sentence shaped her entire life. Her father, Adrien Laurent, had been strict but compassionate. He used to take her into boardrooms when she was just a child, letting her sit in the head chair while explaining how the world moved. Elise remembered watching him sign contracts worth millions, yet he always paused to tell her, "Money builds walls, but love keeps you human." When he died, Elise promised herself she would never lose her humanity. So instead of living in a mansion or flaunting her wealth, she moved into a modest home under a quieter name. In public corporate documents, she was E.V. Laurent. In personal life, she went by Elise Laurent, and after marriage, most people simply knew her as Elise Hawkins. Her husband, Daniel Hawkins, worked at Metroline Dynamics, one of Laurent Enterprises' many subsidiaries. The Metroline contracts he bragged about at home were approved by E.V. Laurent, And he never once asked who that truly was. He had seen the last name Laurent on a few internal memos, but he always shrugged and said, "Rich people and their empires," then changed the subject. He never questioned it. He never cared to. And Elise thought that meant he loved her for her, not for what she owned. She clung to that belief every day. Vivian Clark, 41, Elise's personal assistant and the only person allowed to visit her private home office, stepped in. Vivian had worked with Elise's father before serving Elise. She was sharp, organized, and fiercely loyal. "Ma'am," Vivian said gently, "the board is ready anytime you want to return. They postponed the quarterly review on your request. They assume you're still considering the Metroline expansion." Elise smiled softly, almost apologetic. "Not yet, Vivian. Daniel's promotion celebration is tonight. I promised myself I'd be there. Today, I choose love over power." She slid one final document across the desk and signed it with her usual trick. Just E. Laurent. Never the full signature. Never anything that would reveal who she truly was if Daniel ever saw a stray document. Vivian nodded, understanding. She glanced at Elise's belly, still small, still secret. "Will you tell him today?" That morning, Elise had received the first printed sonogram photo from the clinic. She had stared at it for long minutes, tears in her eyes, before tucking it into a drawer in her home office, planning the perfect moment. Elise hesitated now, then closed her laptop gently, as if sealing away her wealth and responsibilities. Maybe, if he's in the right mood. Vivian's eyes softened. "You deserve joy, Elise. And safety." Elise simply smiled with gratitude. Vivian left. The office fell silent. That evening, Elise moved around the kitchen of her cozy, modest home. She chose simplicity on purpose. Warm lights, soft colors, the scent of fresh herbs, the kind of home where love should have been easy. She cut vegetables while humming a tune her mother used to sing. In her apron pocket, she now kept a copy of the sonogram photo. She had printed a second copy of the office printer, just in case. A tiny heartbeat, a tiny miracle. She wanted Daniel to hold her and celebrate. As soon as she heard the front door open, her rhythm faltered. Daniel Hawkins, 32, tall, ambitious, charming to the world but increasingly cold at home, walked inside. He didn't smile. He didn't greet her. He brushed past her, tossing his jacket on a chair. Elise turned, trying to read his mood. "Hi, love. Dinner's almost ready." He waved her off. "Not now, Elise. I've had a long day. Don't make it worse." Her chest tightened, but she said nothing. She swallowed her words like she always did. He didn't look at her. He didn't notice her fingers trembling on the knife handle. He didn't notice the sonogram hidden in her pocket. Instead, he stared at his phone and muttered, "Tomorrow is my big day. My promotion party. Important people will be there. Don't embarrass me." Elise lowered her gaze as fear crept in quietly. She slipped the sonogram from her apron pocket and into a drawer before he could see. "I only wanted to support," Daniel cut her off. "Just stay home. You never know how to act around my coworkers." She went silent. As she turned away, Daniel's phone lit up with a message. 6 words flashed like a warning sign. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. M." A woman's name followed, and Elise froze. The crack in their marriage had just opened, and scene 2 would show how wide it really was. The next morning, Daniel rushed through the bedroom with sharp, impatient movements, yanking open drawers and slamming them shut. His mood filled the whole house like a storm. He dressed in a crisp suit, the one he wore when he wanted to impress upper management. He sprayed too much cologne, checked himself in the mirror 3 times, and fixed his tie like he was preparing for a red carpet. Elise stood in the doorway, watching him with worry she didn't dare show. He didn't glance at her. His phone buzzed on the dresser. He snatched it quickly, but the screen lit bright enough for her to catch a message preview. "Don't forget that tie I picked. See you tonight. Ma'am." The words hit Elise like cold metal. A woman's message. Too familiar. Too excited. For a split second, guilt flashed across Daniel's face. Quick, human, almost soft. Then it hardened into arrogance, like he had decided he deserved whatever this meant. He noticed Elise looking. "Don't start," he snapped, slipping the phone into his pocket. "It's nothing." But nothing usually didn't pick out a tie. Daniel adjusted his collar. "I have a big night ahead. Promotion, important guests, don't make anything difficult. He brushed past her, again like she was in his way, not his wife. The door slammed behind him. Silence rushed into the room. Elise stood there, replaying the message in her mind. Her heart wasn't only breaking, it was slowly admitting what it had tried to deny. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hand drifting to her stomach. "It's okay," she whispered to the little life inside her. "I'll protect you." But the room felt colder today, as if it already knew protection wouldn't be easy. Later that morning, Elise decided to bring Daniel his lunch, an old habit from better days. In the past, he had smiled when she showed up at his office. Maybe if she reminded him of those times, he would soften. Maybe the message from M was only a misunderstanding. She held on to that thin hope. Daniel's building was tall and polished, with a glass logo that read Metroline Dynamics, a Laurent Group company in small letters at the bottom. He had once pointed at the tiny Laurent and joked, "Some billionaire family owns everything," then gone back to bragging about his promotion track. On the 12th floor, the air smelled like coffee and pressure. Men and women rushed through hallways with laptops and nervous smiles. Elise stepped out of the elevator holding a simple lunch bag. She stopped when she heard Daniel's voice. She didn't want to eavesdrop. She almost walked away. But then she heard her own name. Mark Tanner, 34, Daniel's co-worker and the office gossip, laughed loudly near the hallway corner. "Promotion party tonight, man. Big night. Your wife coming?" Daniel scoffed, a sound Elise had never heard from him before. It wasn't playful, it was cruel. "She?" he said. "God, no. Elise doesn't fit in with these events. Too plain. Too simple. You know what I mean." Mark smirked. "That girl M is coming, right?" Daniel glanced around, lowering his voice, but not enough. "She better. She understands me more than Elise ever will." Something inside Elise cracked, not loudly but painfully. Her fingers tightened around the lunch bag until it crinkled. She stepped back before either man could see her. The humiliation burned, but she stayed very still, letting the truth settle in her chest like a stone. When she finally collected herself, she turned and walked toward the elevator, moving carefully, breath trembling. Just as the doors closed, her phone buzzed. "Appointment reminder, obstetric scan today, 3:45 p.m. She stared at the message. This should have been the day she shared joy with her husband, told him he would be a father, let him hear their baby's heartbeat. Instead, she whispered, "I'll go alone." Her voice was soft, but it shook. That afternoon, Elise sat in the dim clinic room, lying on the examination bed. Cold gel on her belly. The sonographer moved the probe slowly. "There," the woman said, smiling. "Strong heartbeat. Baby looks good." Tears filled Elise's eyes as she watched the tiny figure flicker on the screen. "Would you like another printout?" the nurse asked. "Yes," Elise said quickly. "Please, one more." They handed her 2 copies of the sonogram. She held them like treasure all the way home. When Elise returned to the house, the quiet felt wrong. She went to the small drawer where she had hidden her first sonogram photo from the day before, the one she was saving for the perfect moment. She opened it. The space was empty. Her heart dropped. She hadn't moved it. She knew she hadn't. Someone had been in the drawer. Daniel. Her fingers trembled. For a second, she imagined him seeing it, smiling, calling her to talk, asking why she hadn't told him sooner. Then she remembered his words in the hallway. "Too plain, too simple. M understands me more." The hope she had imagined faded. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. From Daniel's number. She frowned and opened it. It wasn't from him. It was a forwarded message from a contact labeled Maya. "Don't worry, I'll keep him busy tonight. He said you won't be there anyway." Elise's breath vanished. She looked down at the 2 new sonogram prints from the clinic in her hand, then back at the empty drawer. He had seen the first picture. He still chose her not to exist at his side. Elise closed the drawer slowly, slid one of the fresh sonogram photos into her purse, and stared at the front door. Someone had moved her things. Someone had taken the first proof of her baby and thrown away the moment she dreamed of. Elise yanked open her wardrobe with trembling hands, pulling out a soft, elegant dress she had been saving for a special moment. She never cared much about outfits or fancy events, but tonight she wanted to look beautiful. Not for Daniel's ego, but to remind herself that she still mattered. She laid the dress on the bed and smoothed the fabric, trying to quiet the storm in her chest. Her purse lay beside it, one sonogram photo tucked safely inside. Her phone buzzed. Vivian's name flashed on the screen. Elise! Vivian's warm voice filled the room. Are you going tonight? Elise swallowed. I think so. That dress you showed me last month? The blue one? Vivian said gently. Wear it. He should see who he almost lost when he chose his career every time. Elise forced a small smile, even though Vivian couldn't see it. I hope he'll just listen. Vivian's voice softened. You are the kindest person I know. He's lucky to have you. But Elise couldn't shake the weight pressing on her chest. The texts, the laughs he shared with Maya, the empty drawer. Thank you, Vivian, she whispered and ended the call. She turned toward the vanity, ready to do her makeup when, ding! Elise froze. Her laptop, sitting on the small desk in the corner, lit up with a notification bubble. She had allowed message syncing long ago so her own phone could back up to the laptop. When Daniel's phone broke months earlier, he had quickly logged his messaging app into the same laptop, just for backup. He never logged out. Another ding. Elise frowned and walked slowly toward the laptop. A chat window popped open by itself. New messages arriving in real time. The name at the top glowed. Maya. Her heart pounded. Maya. Your wife still thinks tonight is about her? Another message. Daniel. She won't come. I told her she doesn't fit in with my world. Elise's hands went cold. More messages poured in. Maya. Good. I want you to myself. Wear the tie I bought you. Daniel replied. Already wearing it. You always make me look like I belong up there. A video appeared next. Elise hesitated, but her finger moved almost on its own. She clicked. The clip opened. There was Daniel, in an elevator, his hands around Maya's waist. She recognized the Metroline office building walls. They weren't drunk. They weren't arguing. They were laughing. He kissed Maya like he loved her. Maya wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, She has no idea, does she? The video ended. Elise didn't scream. She didn't throw the laptop. She simply lowered herself onto the edge of the bed, her hands in her lap, shaking. Her eyes blurred, but she didn't look away from the frozen screen. Everything she feared, everything she tried to ignore, everything she prayed was just her imagination, was real. Another message appeared beneath the video. Maya, if she finds that baby picture again, just tell her you tossed it because it stressed you out. She'll believe anything. Elise's throat tightened, so he had seen the first sonogram. He had thrown away their baby's picture, and then gone to kiss someone else. Her hand drifted to her stomach. I won't let this hurt you, she whispered to her unborn child. Not again. Not like this. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat, though shaking, began to focus. She looked at the dress on the bed, then at her purse where the second sonogram lay waiting. Her eyes changed. Not weak, not confused, just very, very clear. She stood, took a steady breath, and slipped into the dress. Each movement felt like she was putting on armor instead of fabric. She did her makeup with slow, careful strokes. Her face still looked soft, but now there was something new in her gaze. They think I won't come, she whispered to her reflection. They think I'll stay home and stay small. She picked up her purse, checked that the sonogram was inside, and held it to her chest for one last second. I need to see this myself, she said. As she stepped into her shoes, her phone buzzed again. A notification from the event organizer. Metroline promotion party. Doors open in 30 minutes. Elise looked at the screen and whispered, I'm coming. The moment Elise stepped through the tall glass doors of the event hall, the sound hit her like a wave. Loud laughter, clinking glasses, music thumping through the floors. The room glittered with crystal chandeliers and sequined dresses. This was Daniel's favorite kind of place. Loud, shiny, full of people who only cared about status. She paused just inside the entrance, heart pounding, fingers clenched around her small purse. The sonogram lay inside, safe but fragile. She drew one deep breath and moved forward. Across the room, Daniel Hawkins stood near the stage, surrounded by co-workers and managers. A microphone rested in his hand, his smile wide as he soaked in their praise. Right beside him, leaning too close, was Maya Rivers. Maya, 27, bold and flirtatious, had joined Daniel's department 6 months earlier. She wore a tight red dress that drew every eye in the room. Her hand rested casually on Daniel's arm, as if it belonged there. Elise's stomach twisted. Mark Tanner noticed her first. His eyes widened. He nudged the colleague next to him, whispering behind his glass. People followed his gaze. Some looked away in discomfort. Others watched like it was a show. Maya traced Daniel's tie with one finger, the same tie she had told him to wear. Then she saw Elise. Her lips curled into a slow, cruel smirk. When Daniel finally spotted Elise across the room, his whole body stiffened. The color drained from his face. His eyes flashed not with guilt for what he had done, but with panic that she was here to ruin his image. He shoved the microphone into Mark's hand and stormed through the crowd. "Elise!" he hissed as soon as he reached her, grabbing her arm tighter than necessary. "What are you doing here?" A few people nearby fell silent, pretending not to listen while listening to every word. "I came to support you," Elise said softly. "I wanted to talk to you. Please." She slowly reached into her purse and pulled out the sonogram, holding it as gently as if it might break. "I wanted to tell you." Daniel slapped the photo out of her hand. The sharp sound cut through the music. The picture fluttered to the polished floor, landing face up near a cluster of shoes. Gasps spread around them. Elise's eyes widened. Her hand flew to her stomach. Before she could bend to pick up the photo, Daniel dragged her a few steps away, fingers digging into her arm. "You always do this," he growled under his breath. "You show up, you make things awkward. I told you to stay home. You don't belong here." I told you she'd come and try to spoil the night," Maya said, walking up slowly. Her voice sounded sweet. Her smile did not. Elise's heart pounded in her ears. From near the wall, security officer Nolan watched. He had noticed Daniel's harsh grip the moment Elise walked in. At the first sign of trouble, he had quietly tapped his chest camera on. The small red light blinked, recording every second. "Daniel, please," Elise whispered. "At least listen. This is our baby." "Stop using drama to control me," he snapped. "You always make everything about you." All around them, co-workers exchanged uneasy looks. The music faded out as someone near the DJ signaled to turn it down. Then it happened. In his anger, Daniel shoved her, hard. Her feet slid on the polished floor. She fell backward, instinctively curling around her stomach. Her shoulder hit the ground first. Pain shot through her side. People screamed. A glass shattered. Someone shouted, "Call an ambulance!" Nolan moved fast. He pushed through the circle that had formed, dropped to one knee beside Elise, and spoke calmly. "Ma'am, don't move. I saw what happened." Elise's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't sob. Her breath came in short bursts. She stared at the sonogram photo lying near the heel of someone's shoe. The tiny shape of her baby still visible. Daniel threw up his hands, voice rising. "She slipped. She's clumsy, that's all." She tripped on her own dress. Nolan looked up at him, expression flat. "Sir, I have the entire incident recorded from the moment you grabbed her arm. Please step back." Maya tugged on Daniel's sleeve, panic flickering in her eyes now. "Daniel, stop talking. Just stop." But Daniel was too angry and too exposed. "Why did you even come?" he spat toward Elise. "Why can't you just stay where you belong?" Every person in the room stared, some with disgust, some with pity, none with respect. Elise tried to sit up. Pain pulled at her side. Nolan gently steadied her. "Ma'am, the ambulance is on its way," he said quietly. "You hit the floor hard. We need to get you checked, for you and the baby." She nodded weakly, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me." Nolan glanced toward the cameras around the hall, then back at his own chest cam. "I didn't just see you," he murmured. "The camera did too." Daniel's eyes widened, realization crashing in. The nightmare he tried to keep private had just been turned into evidence. As Nolan helped Elise to her feet and guided her toward the exit, the crowd parted like a slow, silent wave. For a brief second, Elise saw Daniel standing alone, breathing hard. A small smear of red lipstick stained his shirt collar. Maya's exact shade. She looked at it, and her eyes darkened with a new kind of quiet. "It's not over," she whispered under her breath. Elise's body shook as the hospital doors swung open and the stretcher rolled in. Bright white lights flashed above her as nurses hurried alongside. "Get a monitor. Check her vitals. We need a fetal heartbeat now." Metal trays clattered. Machines beeped. Voices overlapped. Every sound felt too loud. Nolan stayed beside the bed as far as hospital rules allowed. His face, usually calm, carried honest worry. He kept enough distance to respect her space, but close enough to answer questions. Elise was moved onto a hospital bed. A nurse gently lifted her blouse and placed a monitor band over her belly. The machine beeped once, then again, then fell into a steady rhythm. The baby's heartbeat filled the room like a soft drum. Only then did the rush ease. Dr. Helen Caro, 45, calm and experienced in high-risk pregnancies, stepped in. She scanned the monitor, checked Elise's bruised arm and sighed, then looked her in the eyes with a mix of firmness and kindness. "Elise," she said gently, "your baby is safe." Relief washed over Elise so fast it left her dizzy. Her eyes welled, but she swallowed the sob. Dr. Caro's tone shifted. "But you are not. Your blood pressure is very high. Your body is under serious stress. If this continues, it could put both you and the baby in danger." Elise stared at the ceiling. Danger. She had never applied that word to her marriage before. The door burst open. Grace Laurent, Elise's older sister, 31 strong, protective, and the only blood family she had left, rushed in. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were wild with fear. "Elise," Grace grabbed her hand. "Are you okay? I came as soon as Vivian called. What happened?" Elise's voice was barely a whisper. "He shoved me at the party. I was trying to tell him about the baby." Grace's expression crumpled from shock into something darker. She turned to Nolan. "Is that true?" Nolan lowered his gaze respectfully. "Yes, ma'am. I recorded the whole thing on my body camera. I've already logged an incident report with the venue and saved the footage in 2 places. No one can erase what happened." Grace looked like she wanted to punch a wall. "Daniel did this," she whispered. "To you? While you're pregnant?" Elise closed her eyes. The monitor beeped steadily beside her. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Nolan stepped closer and placed a small USB drive on the bedside table. "This is a copy of the footage," he said quietly. "Time-stamped. Audio included. I'll keep the original file secured with my company, but this one is for you, for the police, or your lawyers, or whoever you trust." Elise stared at the tiny device. It looked small, but it carried truth too big to ignore. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling, "for not pretending you saw nothing." Nolan nodded once. "You didn't deserve what happened. None of this is your fault." Then he stepped out to give them privacy. The room grew quieter. Only the heartbeat monitor and distant hospital sounds remained. Elise stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Her mind felt like it was trying to climb out of thick fog. "Grace," she whispered. "I don't know how I got here." Grace squeezed her hand. "You love the wrong man. That's not a crime. That's just human." Elise's breath shook. "I thought if I kept my real life away from him, things would be simple. I thought hiding who I am would protect us." Grace frowned. "Your real life?" Elise blinked slowly, and the past rose up. The Grand Laurent family chapel was filled with dark suits and quiet crying. Elise stood at the front, dressed in black, staring at her father's coffin. A group of men and women approached. The Laurent Enterprises board. One of them, Mr. Adler, bowed slightly. "Elise, your father left the empire to you. You are the new CEO of Laurent Enterprises." Elise's eyes were red and swollen. She looked at Grace, then at the board. "I can't lead yet," she whispered. "I don't even know who I am without him. I need time to live simply first, to see the world outside these walls without security and titles." Mr. Adler nodded, gentle but serious. "Then we will keep your position private. The world will know only Evie Laurent. We'll seat trusted faces in front of cameras, and you can attend board meetings under control. When you are ready to step forward publicly, you can." Elise's gaze returned to the coffin. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Power means nothing if you can't protect the ones you love. She had decided then to build a life where someone loved her without knowing about the power. She believed that would be the truest kind of love. Back in the hospital room, Elise whispered, I thought loving quietly would protect me. Grace's eyes softened with pity and anger. You married someone who never even tried to see you. Elise's phone buzzed weakly on the bedside table. Vivian, Elise answered. Vivian? Elise, your voice! Vivian almost broke. What did he do? Elise didn't explain. She didn't have the strength. Instead, her eyes moved to the USB, the bruise on her arm, and the steady heartbeat on the monitor. Something inside her hardened. Vivian, she said, her tone suddenly cold and clear. Call Adrian Voss. Vivian inhaled sharply. Adrian Voss, Laurent Enterprises' most powerful lawyer. Tell him I need an emergency consultation, Elise continued, and tell him, her jaw tightened. Tell him I'm done protecting Daniel. As Elise ended the call, the fetal monitor beeped calmly beside her, steady and strong, but her next words cut through the quiet like steel. Tomorrow, she whispered, everything changes. The hospital room door swung open with urgency, not panic. Adrian Voss, 52, sharp-eyed and composed, stepped inside carrying a thick leather briefcase. He was the lead attorney for Laurent Enterprises, the man CEOs called when they wanted problems to disappear without a sound. Tonight, he had come because Elise finally said one word she had never used about her husband before. Enough. Grace stood up from the chair beside the bed as Adrian approached. Vivian slipped in just behind him, her expression tight with worry. Together they formed a quiet wall of protection around Elise's hospital bed. Adrian set the briefcase on the side table and opened it with precise movements. Papers, folders, official seals. He spoke firmly, wasting no time. Elise, he said, his voice respectful. Inside this case are three things. A petition for a temporary protection order, the initial divorce filing, and documentation reaffirming your authority as majority shareholder and CEO. I've prepared them according to your message. Elise looked at the stack of documents. A few days ago, the sight would have made her hands shake. Now, after the party, the fall, the bruise on her arm, and the steady sound of her baby's heartbeat, she felt strangely calm. Give me a pen, she said. Adrian handed it to her. She read enough to understand the essentials, then signed. Every line, every page. No trembling, no hesitation. Vivian watched, stunned. Grace's eyes filled with both grief and pride. Adrian gave a single approving nod. When it was done, Elise leaned back against the pillows. She looked exhausted but not weak, like someone finally finished fighting herself. Vivian stepped forward, holding a slim file she had been guarding against her chest. Elise, she said softly, these are the internal audits you asked me to start months ago. You remember? When you told me something didn't feel right in Metroline's expense reports? Elise's fingers brushed the folder. She had almost forgotten those late nights where a quiet worry had nagged her. Missed receipts, strange travel claims, extra consultancy payments. You sensed something long before tonight, Vivian said sadly. You just hoped you were wrong. Elise opened the file. Charts, notes, red flags. I didn't want to believe it, she whispered. I thought love would fix everything. I thought if I kept my personal life separate, if he didn't know I was Evie Laurent, he'd at least be honest at work. Her voice cracked, then steadied. But love doesn't stop cruelty, and secrets don't stop greed. Adrian reached into the briefcase again and pulled out another slim folder. We took your concerns seriously, he said. I asked Samuel Reed from Internal Investigations to quietly review Metroline's upper management 2 months ago. What happened last night gives us the legal and moral ground to act on what he found. He placed the folder on her lap. Preliminary findings show irregular transfers, unauthorized expenses, and possible data leaks tied to Daniel Hawkins, Adrian continued. Samuel is compiling everything for you. He'll brief you as soon as it's ready. Grace gasped. Vivian covered her mouth. Elise closed her eyes for a moment, not in denial, but in confirmation. So it wasn't just her heart he had betrayed. He had abused her company's trust as well. She opened her eyes, cold and clear now. He hurt my child, she said quietly. He attacked me. He used my company's money to fund his affair. He will not have another chance. Adrian closed the briefcase. Then we move forward. The protection order request will reach the court by morning. The divorce petition will be filed, and as CEO, you can call a private emergency board session. Elise nodded slowly. Schedule it for tomorrow morning. Confidential. Only voting board members, you, Samuel, and Vivian. I'll preside. Vivian immediately began typing into her tablet. I'll send the notices under your formal authority. With Grace's help, Elise stood and walked to the small bathroom mirror. The bruise on her wrist had grown darker. She traced it with her fingertip, breathing deeply. I am done loving him, she said softly. To herself, to her child, to the woman in the glass. Her reflection didn't flinch. She walked back to the bed. Vivian's tablet vibrated sharply in her hand. Vivian glanced at the screen, and the color drained from her face. Elise, she whispered, you need to see this. On the tablet was a new email from Samuel Reed. Subject line, Daniel Hawkins, full findings compiled, urgent. The small conference room inside the hospital's private wing had been turned into a war room. Laptops glowed. Files lay open like weapons. A large monitor waited on the wall. Samuel Reed, 48, sharp, discreet, and feared in the corporate world for his ability to uncover any lie, stood at the head of the table. He carried a thick black folder under one arm. Tonight, his work belonged to Elise. Elise entered the room slowly, still in her hospital gown and a loose cardigan Grace had brought from home. The bruise on her arm showed faintly where the sleeve slipped. Her steps were careful, but her posture was straight. Grace took a seat near the door, watching her sister like a guard. Adrian sat beside Samuel. Vivian sat with her tablet ready. Nolan and Dr. Caro had been invited as needed witnesses. Samuel set the folder down directly in front of Elise. Ms. Laurent, he said, using her real name with quiet respect. This is the complete report on Daniel Hawkins. Some of it comes from the audits you ordered months ago. Some of it comes from the last 24 hours, once we had cause to dig deeper. Elise opened the folder. The first page hit like a punch. Printed emails, subject lines, attachments. Samuel tapped them with one finger. These, he explained, are email exchanges between Daniel Hawkins and Maya Rivers. They used personal accounts, but some of the content references internal Metroline proposals. We captured these because several messages were sent from company devices and over company Wi-Fi, which allowed our security filters to flag them. Elise scanned the lines. Forward me the draft first. I'll show it to my contact at the other firm. Don't worry, they'll pay us privately when the deal goes through. I deserve more than your boring little salary, Danny. Make it work. Samuel continued. This indicates he was sharing confidential information with a competitor in exchange for personal gain. Vivian's jaw clenched. Grace whispered, he betrayed the company, too. Samuel slid another stack of papers forward. These are corporate card statements, expense reports, and approvals he pushed through. Notice the pattern: restaurant bills, hotel stays, jewelry purchases, and a rental deposit for an apartment under Maya's name. Elise saw the numbers, dates that lined up with the messages, places that weren't hers. All using Metroline corporate funds, Samuel said. He disguised them as client meetings and strategic consulting. Elise turned another page. Another file waited, transcript printouts and audio logs. Samuel explained, these are voicemails and recorded calls from the shared phone plan. Many companies archive call logs for investigation purposes when fraud is suspected. Once we had your permission, we retrieved them. Vivian played one sample on the conference speaker. Daniel's voice filled the room, mocking and relaxed. Elise is harmless, boring. She doesn't get this world, but she's comfortable for now. Maya's laugh followed. She'll never be part of your real life. Not like I am. Grace covered her mouth, stunned. Elise did not cry. She didn't even blink. She just turned the page and kept going. Nolan stepped forward then, placing a small USB drive on the table, the same one he had left by her hospital bed earlier, now carefully labeled and sealed. My chest cam footage, he said. From the party. The recording begins when I saw Mr. Hawkins grab her arm. It shows the shove, the fall, and his reaction afterward. I've also submitted the original to my security company and copied it for legal use. Adrian nodded. That alone is enough for the protection order and assault charges. Dr. Carroll moved closer, holding a sealed envelope. This, she said, is Elise's medical documentation, bruise photos, examination notes, and my written statement about the risk the incident posed to her pregnancy. Elise accepted it with steady hands. On the table now lay everything: emotional betrayal, corporate misconduct, misuse of company funds, potential data leaks, physical assault, medical risk to mother and child, witness reports. Vivian's fingers flew over her tablet. I'm compiling all of this into a board-ready digital file, she said. By tomorrow morning, every board member will have a secure packet, timeline, supporting documents, videos, and a summary. Adrian added, and as CEO, you'll have full authority to recommend termination and legal action. Samuel closed the final folder with quiet finality. When Daniel walks into that boardroom tomorrow, he said, he will think he's there to secure his promotion. Grace exhaled shakily. He has no idea what's coming. Elise spoke at last, her voice soft but steady. Good. She placed her hand gently over the evidence. He hurt my child. He stole from my company. He mocked my marriage. She looked up, eyes hard. Tomorrow, he answers for all of it. At that exact moment, Vivian's tablet buzzed. She checked the notification, and her eyes widened. Elise, she said slowly, Daniel just emailed the entire board. He's thanking them in advance for supporting his promotion. He thinks tomorrow's meeting is about making him vice director. Elise's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something sharper. Then we won't disappoint him, she said. The double glass doors of the executive floor swung open as Daniel Hawkins strutted in, shoulders back, smile wide. Today he wasn't just an employee. In his mind, he was a man about to step into greatness. His suit was perfectly pressed. He wore the tie Maya had chosen. He had spent half the car ride staring at his reflection on his phone. Maya walked in beside him in a sleek black dress and a smug expression. Are you sure they'll put you in front of everyone? She whispered. I want to see their faces when they announce you. Daniel smirked. You'll see. They scheduled an emergency executive session and copied me. That means big decisions. I've been hinting at a vice director role for months. This is my moment. Maya glanced around at the polished floors, the expensive art, the quiet power in every detail. I still can't believe your little department job got you here, she said. He laughed. Trust me, this is just the beginning. They reached the reception desk. The assistant there gave a practiced smile, the kind that told guests nothing. Mr. Hawkins, she said, the board is waiting inside. Ms. Maya, she supplied quickly, standing taller. I'm afraid only board members and invited staff are allowed in the room, the assistant said politely. You're welcome to wait here in the lounge. Maya looked annoyed, but Daniel squeezed her hand. Just wait, he told her. I won't be long. Then we'll celebrate. He walked toward the large double doors of the boardroom and pushed them open without hesitation. The room was vast. A long glass table stretched from one end to the other. Screens lined the walls. Men and women in tailored suits sat silent, their faces calm and unreadable. But what stopped Daniel cold was the person at the head of the table, Elise, not in a simple dress, not nervous in a corner. Calm, straight-backed, hands folded on the table as if she had sat there 1,000 times. He blinked hard, laugh forming, but breaking halfway. What are you doing here? He said, voice shaky. Is this some kind of joke? Are you here to watch my promotion? Chairman Wythe, 60, stern and respected, cleared his throat. Mr. Hawkins, please take a seat. Daniel hesitated, then forced a grin and sat halfway down the table, still facing Elise. The room felt wrong, too quiet, too focused on anything but him. He tried to regain control. Look, this is surprising, he chuckled nervously. My wife likes to check on my career sometimes. No one laughed. Elise didn't speak. Instead, she reached into a slim leather folder and took out a small, heavy badge. She placed it gently on the table so the gold letters caught the light. E.V. Laurent, Chief Executive Officer, Laurent Enterprises. A collective murmur rippled through the room, not of surprise but of acknowledgement, as if the board was simply watching the mask come off. Daniel stared at the badge, then at Elise. Elise, his voice cracked. What is this? Some prop? Say something. Tell them you're joking. Elise looked at him with calm, distant eyes. This is not a joke, Daniel. Chairman Wythe folded his hands. Mr. Hawkins, perhaps your wife never felt the need to tell you this, but she is not simply your wife. She is the CEO and majority owner of this corporation and its subsidiaries, including Metroline Dynamics. Daniel's skin went pale. Owner, he stammered. Elise, you're E.V. Laurent? Elise answered simply. Yes. He blinked rapidly, trying to catch up. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted a marriage built on love, not greed, she replied. I wanted to know who you were without my power in the room. Silence pressed down like weight. Elise nodded once to Vivian. Vivian stood, connected her tablet to the screen, and spoke clearly. This emergency board session concerns Daniel Hawkins and multiple severe violations. The screens lit up. First, the chest cam footage from the party. The room watched Daniel grab Elise's arm. They saw the harsh words, the slap at the sonogram, the shove, the fall. They heard gasps. They saw Elise curled on the floor, protecting her stomach. Daniel lunged from his chair. Turn that off! She slipped. The floor was... Sit down, Mr. Hawkins, Chairman Wythe said firmly. Nolan, now in a formal security uniform as an invited witness, spoke from the back. The footage is unedited. The timestamps are consistent with my official report. Next slide, the elevator video. Daniel and Maya, hands around each other, kissing, laughing, Maya mocking Elise. Next, emails, messages, screenshots showing leaked proposals sent toward a rival company. Next, expense reports and corporate card statements. Restaurant bills, jewelry, apartment rent. All coded as client entertainment and business development. Whispers spread around the table now. Angry, disappointed, Daniel's legs weakened. He gripped the edge of the chair. She knew everything, he whispered. Elise didn't answer. She didn't need to. Adrian rose to speak. As you can see, Mr. Hawkins misused company funds, violated confidentiality, and assaulted the CEO in public while she was pregnant. Our legal team has already filed a criminal complaint concerning the assault and forwarded the financial evidence to regulatory authorities. Chairman Wythe nodded gravely. Board members, we will now vote on immediate termination of Daniel Hawkins' employment for cause, revocation of all benefits, and a recommendation to industry partners and regulators regarding his misconduct. Hands went up around the table. Everyone. Unanimous, the chairman said. Effective immediately, Daniel Hawkins is terminated. The door opened. A uniformed corporate security chief stepped in, accompanied by a police officer who had waited outside for the decision. The officer approached Daniel calmly. Mr. Hawkins, there is an active complaint and sufficient evidence to proceed. You're required to come with us for processing. Daniel stumbled back. No, you can't do this. Elise, I'm your husband. Elise's face did not harden, but it did not soften either. You stopped being my husband when you became my attacker, she said quietly. The officer placed handcuffs around Daniel's wrists. Daniel's voice broke completely. Elise, please, we can fix this. I'll change. She looked away. The cuffs clicked. This is not over, he shouted as they led him toward the door. You hear me? This is not... The door closed behind him. The room exhaled. Adrian leaned toward Elise and spoke in a low voice only she and the nearest members could hear. The court hearing on the protective order and initial charges has been scheduled, he said. We'll move through the law now. Elise nodded once. She picked up her CEO badge, slipped it into her jacket pocket, and whispered to herself, Next. The truth goes on record. Several weeks later, the heavy doors of the courtroom opened, and Daniel Hawkins was escorted inside by 2 bailiffs. He wasn't in a tailored suit this time. His hair was unkempt, his eyes bloodshot, his shoulders slumped. He looked nothing like the man who strutted into the boardroom expecting a promotion. He looked like someone whose world had been eaten from the inside out. Whispers rippled through the packed room. Reporters sat with notepads ready. Spectators leaned forward, eager for every detail. At the far side of the room, Elise walked in. She wore a simple, elegant dress and a neat blazer. Her pregnancy was more visible now, a gentle curve beneath the fabric. Grace walked beside her, steady and supportive. Adrian followed, carrying a binder of organized files. Elise's expression was calm, not cold. Not triumphant, just finished. Daniel turned as soon as he heard her steps. "Elise," he called out, voice frayed. Please talk to me. You haven't answered any of my calls." She did not look at him. She took her place at the front beside Adrian. Judge Ramos, 55, known for fairness and a low tolerance for excuses, entered and took his seat. When he spoke, his voice cut through the murmurs at once. "Court is now in session. This is the combined hearing on the petition for a permanent protective order and related civil claims. Elise Vivian Laurent Hawkins versus Daniel Hawkins." Laurent. Her full name echoed through the courtroom speakers. Some reporters scribbled faster. Others exchanged glances. Confirmation of the rumors about the hidden CEO. Daniel flinched at the sound. Adrian stood. "Your Honor, we will present evidence covering physical assault, emotional harm, and pattern of coercive behavior. The criminal, financial, and corporate misconduct matters are being handled in separate proceedings." "Understood," Judge Ramos replied. "Proceed." The lights dimmed slightly as screens turned on. Clip 1, Nolan's chest cam footage. Everyone saw Daniel's hand around Elise's wrist. The harsh tone, the slap at the sonogram photo, the shove. Elise hitting the floor, crying out and curling around her stomach. Gasps erupted. Someone in the gallery whispered, "She's pregnant." Daniel shook his head violently. "It's exaggerated. She lost her balance. Mr. Hawkins," Judge Ramos said sharply, "you will remain silent until asked to speak." Clip 2, the elevator video. Daniel and Maya, laughing, kissing, mocking the wife who would never be part of his real world. Clip 3, voicemail audio. Daniel's voice, dismissive and cruel. "She's good at cooking and keeping things quiet. That's about it." Maya's voice followed. "As long as she stays out of the way, who cares?" The clips ended. Silence filled the room for a moment. Then the witnesses began. Dr. Helen Caro took the stand first. Calm, professional. "Elise came to the hospital after a fall caused by a forceful push," she testified. "She had bruising on her arm and side. Her blood pressure was severely elevated. While the baby remained stable, the stress and physical trauma placed the pregnancy at real risk. In my medical opinion, this incident was dangerous to both." Daniel lowered his head. Next, Nolan. He stood tall in his uniform. "I am the head of venue security," he said. "On the night of the promotion party, I activated my body camera when I saw Mr. Hawkins grab Mrs. Hawkins' arm. The footage clearly shows him shoving her. There was no accidental slip." Adrian presented additional documents, messages forwarded from Daniel's phone, notes from the hospital, and a summary of Elise's history of trying to keep the peace at home. Finally, Elise took the stand. The room went completely still. Adrian asked simple questions. "Elise, did you ever give Daniel permission to push you, threaten you, or decide when you were allowed to be seen in public?" "No," she answered quietly. "Did you tell him you were pregnant before that night?" "I tried," she said. "He ignored me. When I went to tell him at the party, he knocked the sonogram out of my hand and shoved me." Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes glistened. But she didn't break. When Adrian finished, Judge Ramos looked at Daniel. "Mr. Hawkins," he said, "you may respond briefly." Daniel stood, hands chained loosely. "Elise," he said, ignoring the judge's direction, speaking straight to her. "Please, I was under stress. I was trying to impress people. I didn't mean to push that hard. I made mistakes, but I love you. I can change. Don't destroy my life over one night." For the first time in the hearing, Elise looked at him. Her eyes weren't cruel. They were just completely done. "You had years," she said softly. "Years to be kind. Years to listen. Years not to lie, not to cheat, not to throw away our child's first picture. This isn't about one night. This is about who you chose to be." Daniel's lips trembled. He had no answer. Judge Ramos spoke. "Based on the evidence, witness statements, and your own recorded behavior, this court grants Mrs. Laurent Hawkins a permanent protective order, full authority over the marital assets per prenuptial agreements, and damages for emotional distress. The divorce is granted and will be finalized subject to standard processing. Any violation of the order will result in immediate arrest. Daniel's knees almost buckled. "No," he whispered. "Please." The bailiffs moved closer as he tried to step toward Elise. "Elise, please don't leave me," he sobbed openly now. "I need you, A bailiff blocked his path. "That's enough." Elise rose from the stand and walked back to her seat. She didn't look back. As she reached the aisle, an older woman stepped forward hesitantly. Mrs. Hawkins, 60, Daniel's mother. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Elise," she whispered, reaching out. "I'm so sorry. I didn't raise him to—" Elise gently pulled her hand away, not unkind but firm. "Some choices," she said, "are not about how we were raised. They're about who we decide to be." Mrs. Hawkins broke into quiet sobs as Elise walked past her. Grace wrapped an arm around Elise's shoulders. "You did the right thing," she said softly. Elise nodded once, though her face held tired sadness. As they neared the exit, Adrian hurried to catch up. "Elise," he said quietly, "the media already knows who you are now. The CEO, the case, everything. They're waiting outside." Elise paused. Her eyes sharpened. She laid her hand gently on her stomach. "Then we make sure they see the right story," she said. The elevator doors to the executive floor slid open, and every employee nearby went still as Elise Laurent stepped out. The trial had been in the news for days. The headlines had been ruthless about Daniel, but the story the staff whispered about in the hallways was different. How their hidden CEO had survived. How she had stood in court without raising her voice. How she had walked away. Now, seeing her in person, pregnant and composed, they straightened unconsciously as she passed. Elise walked down the hallway with quiet authority. Not the loud, aggressive kind. The kind that came from knowing exactly who she was now. Her chin was lifted, her steps steady. Inside her office, documents lay spread across the table. Not contracts for acquisitions this time. Policies, drafts, reforms. She took her seat and picked up the top document. Maternity and Safety Protection Policy, Laurent Enterprises. Under it were new protocols she had worked on with HR, legal, and security since the hearing. Extended paid maternity leave, confidential support lines, emergency housing for employees in danger, direct access to legal aid, anonymous reporting of domestic abuse without fear of losing their job. These were protections she wished she had felt brave enough to ask for when the first signs appeared in her own marriage. She read the last line, then signed at the bottom. E.V. Laurent Vivian entered the office quietly, holding a small box. "Elise," she said, smiling gently, "I thought you might need this." Inside were tiny baby clothes, soft cotton, neutral colors, nothing flashy. Vivian's voice trembled a little. "You've spent weeks taking care of everyone else," she said. "Just a reminder that you're building something beautiful too." Elise ran her fingers over the tiny fabric. Warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you, Vivian," she whispered, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Vivian's eyes glistened. "You saved yourself, Elise, and your child. We just stood beside you." Grace stepped in next, more relaxed than she had been in months. The hard lines of worry around her eyes had softened. "You're trending online, you know," Grace said playfully. "Half the comments are about how strong you are. The other half are people asking how to apply to work for you." Elise laughed softly for the first time in a long while. "I just want them to know," she said, "that no job is worth staying with someone who breaks you." She walked to the window. The city stretched beneath her, noisy, bright, alive. Sunlight spilled across the glass and onto her face. Her hand rested on her stomach. She remembered the fear. The humiliation, the bruises, the sound of Daniel yelling that she didn't belong in his world. And then she remembered something stronger, her father's voice, her own reflection in that hospital mirror, the heartbeat on the monitor. "I chose silence for love," she said quietly, "but silence almost cost me my child. Never again." Grace and Vivian stood behind her, proud and steady. Elise turned back to her desk, closed the policy folders, and switched off her computer. She picked up her CEO badge and slipped it into her pocket, not as a shield this time, but simply as part of who she was. For the first time in a long while, she felt whole, alive, free, certain. She walked toward the door and flipped off the office light. The hallway outside glowed softly, leading toward the elevator. Just before the doors closed, Elise whispered, "This is only the beginning." I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment the lessons you've learned. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.